Welcome back to WRC Generations and welcome to what I think is the worst aspect of this rally game. Yes, not all our videos can be positive. I've engaged the misery muscle for this one. Now, in order to talk about this, we are at Rally New Zealand and we've set the weather to rain. And as a Brit, I would like to say that I think I'm kind of an expert on grey, misery and despair. So this is coming from something deep inside me, this video. So let's start driving. And yes, the worst aspect of WRC Generations is, I would say, the rain, wet weather and the nature of the wet weather in this game. Now, before I say what's really bad, I will say that I think the wet weather works functionally fine from a gameplay perspective. It's perfectly drivable. It doesn't damage the game. It's not what I would describe as broken. It's just that wet weather is done so much better in other rally games and other games in general that it really stands out as being a little bit lackluster in this. So the reasons that it's lackluster, first of all, as you can see, we've got the windscreen wipers on here. I turn the windscreen wipers off and you can see the raindrops on the screen. Really, as far as raindrop effects go, it's really not that great. It doesn't feel like the rain's really building up on the screen. With the way the road is here, there's not... The road dust and everything is all very like not getting on the screen at all, which maybe is realistic. There's nothing coming off the trees onto this screen. There's no like variation in the drops, and the way that the rain is sort of moving on the windscreen just looks really computer generated and artificial. Now, obviously, we've been spoiled by like shader patch in Assetto Corsa, which does a phenomenal job of rain effects on the windscreen and audio and everything. But even stuff like Drive Tribe had incredible rain, and even going back to the old Colin McRae Codemasters games, the rain in them, Colin McRae Rally 3, which came out 400 years ago, the rain was actually really quite impressive in many ways. And especially the new Dirt Rally games, the rain on the windscreen just really worked much better. And the fact that it's easier to see out the windscreen with the windscreen wipers off, I think is a little bit, you kind of want to have to use the windscreen wipers a little bit. Maybe they put that spray on the screen though that disperses the water, so maybe this is realistic. But the way the water's moving around, it doesn't really immerse me into the fact that I'm driving in a really wet stage. But separate to that, what I would say as well is, and worse than those raindrops on the screen, the road surface, it looks more like it's got ice on it rather than it being wet. So it should really just be darker and then have puddles on it and a little bit of specular highlights, rather than this what looks like, as I say, ice rather than torrentially wet. It just doesn't look right. And then this specular highlight of the sky kind of glitches out and bugs a bit, and certain objects in the environment end up highlighting in a weird way. Like you see the grass there, it's like it's got a drop shadow or glow around it, which is really quite off-putting, along with the shimmer. Every time the windscreen wipers move, you can see it shimmering that reflection as well, which just looks really off, and it's quite distracting. Weirdly though, the puddles, like the full-on puddles in the road, are actually really nicely done, and when you drive over the puddles, it actually affects the handling of the vehicle quite nicely. So it's just a bit strange how it's kind of come together with the wet rain in this. From a handling perspective, it comes across to me like basically just lower grip levels rather than the road surface being a sort of different type of road surface due to the way that a saturated dirt track would really affect the composition of the mud and the grip and grooves, and it in the wet it just comes across as much like sort of lower grip driving in many ways with the vehicles in this. And I will say, I think it kind of highlights some aspects of the handling that aren't necessarily the most desirable aspects of handling. So with an all-wheel drive car, often you can sort of get the car set up in a corner and you can absolutely welly it through a corner using the power and sort of do a on-powered, almost like a drift, and you can, like a front-wheel drive car, you can just steer it through because it's all-wheel drive. In WRC Generations, it can really struggle sometimes to hook the car up on the power late corner. Early corner it's not too bad as long as you don't lock up, but mid corner it can sometimes be a little bit weird, I think, in terms of maintaining that kind of drift slide through the corner. And the rain magnifies quite a lot the propensity for when you brake, even if you move the brake bars further back, for what feels like the front's locking up and the car just ploughing on. So it takes quite a lot of practice to avoid those situations. As I say, I think in the context of the single player, you need rain, you can choose different tyres, it does affect the strategy, it works for the game. I wouldn't describe it as broken, I just think the bar is so high with other racing titles and other rally games that this really stands out as being, I think, one of the worst aspects of WRC Generations, which is a shame really. Obviously VR is probably a really bad thing for people that want to play in VR, but yeah, we'll put that to one side. But yeah, do you guys, does the rain annoy you guys, or do you think it's like definitely a much lower level of quality than what you'd expect relative to other stuff in the title? Especially as this isn't the first WRC game. They've done quite a few, and I think a lot of the rain issues have persisted from game to game. I wonder if it's a shared view. But there you go. Thanks for watching this one, guys. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, make yourselves a cup of tea, take care, and goodbye.